Who are the Ad Watchers? We are attorneys at the National Advertising Division of BBB National Programs, a team with over 50 years of experience investigating and resolving disputes over the accuracy of national advertising campaigns.
We don't just take ads at face value. We put them to the test. Why? Because advertising law can be simple, but it's the execution that's hard. Welcome to Ad Watchers, NAD's podcast that gives a view into how our organization reviews claims and applies advertising law. If you missed any of our previous episodes, don't forget to check them out later. They're available wherever you are listening to this. Eric, what are we talking about today?
Annie, today we're talking about something that has been on everyone's mind lately, and that's AI. We know this goes beyond our usual subjects in advertising law, but AI and questions about AI are impacting every business and every walk of life. So we thought it would be a good time to dig into that topic and talk about its implications in advertising and the law, and more generally. But we've already seen AI come up at NAD recently, haven't we, Annie?
Yes, AI is on our monitoring radar. In June, we published a decision in a monitoring case, AI Pro. This company advertised its software with the claims Chat GPT 4.0 available now, the chatbot everyone's using, the most powerful chatbot ever developed, and that AI Pro is Chat GPT 4.0. We also determined that there was an implied claim that AI is Chat GPT 4.0. The advertiser modified the advertising to say powered by OpenAI, powered by Chat GPT technology, with a disclosure that the software was independently developed and not affiliated, endorsed, or sponsored by OpenAI. We recommended that the disclosure be clear and conspicuous, or that the advertising otherwise make clear that AI Pro provides applications built on OpenAI and ChatGPT, and that its application programming interfaces or APIs are not the same as or provided by OpenAI or ChatGPT. So we're definitely going to be seeing more of these cases.
That's right. I'm pretty sure that won't be the last time we see advertising claims about AI before us at NAD. AI is a topic I can't say I've had too much experience with personally or professionally, and this is definitely a topic we all want to know more about. So let's get right to our guest today. We're very excited to have Ken Crutchfield. Ken is Vice President and General Manager of Legal Markets at Wolters, Kluwer Legal and Regulatory US, a leading provider of information, business intelligence, regulatory, and legal workflow solutions. Ken has more than 3 decades of experience as a leader in information and software solutions across industries. He's written extensively on the subject of AI. So welcome to the Ad Watchers, Ken.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Andy. It's great to be here.
We're really delighted to have you, Ken. So please tell us more about your work at Wolters Kluwer.
Sure. So I manage the legal markets business at Wolters Kluwer. And Wolters Kluwer is a company that serves professionals in a number of different areas, including health, tax, financial services, in addition to the law. And we serve, and I manage the business that is focused primarily on large law firms, providing legal research solutions to them. And then we also do an increasing amount of software solutions. So we have software solutions, for example, that are serving the corporate legal departments in the United States and around the world. We do a lot where our motto is to focus on being, where you have to be right. So we really leverage expertise and go deep in different areas. So securities, tax, antitrust, areas like this. These are areas where we focus and provide a lot of expert information that helps law firms and attorneys advise their clients effectively.
One of the topics you've written extensively on is AI. So for everyone out there, can you give everyone an overview of the different types of AI?
Sure. So I think one of the things that people often forget is that AI is all around us. Whether we think of ChatGPT, which was such a groundbreaking thing back in November of 2022 when ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo came out and blew everybody's minds. Your iPhone has had AI in it for a long time. Your Amazon Echo has had it, being able to ask questions like with Siri or to Amazon Echo to start playing a song on Spotify. There's a lot of different things that are out there from an AI perspective. I think of neural networks, which are often the use case. Most familiar is self-driving autonomous vehicles, or the lane assist that you have in many products today. Cars. I just bought a car this last weekend, and that was one of those things. Just trying to understand and reorient to how that operates. So these technologies are out there in a lot of different places. In Google, in Meta and Facebook with facial recognition when it suggests tagging one of your friends in a post that you didn't name. There's just a lot out there. Even in business, we see that where like Microsoft Office has the ability to suggest a document that might be relevant to a meeting that you're in on Teams. So there's just a lot going on there that's out there already with AI. And oftentimes we don't really kind of think of that baseline and how much AI is out there.
So for all the lawyers out there in our audience, could you tell us what sparked your interest in AI and how it impacts the legal sector?
Sure. Well, I think that the big thing was, generative AI took me, and I really looked at generative AI and thought, this is really an awesome technology. It's doing things that are new. It's generating content, which is really a distinction between what other products have done. With AI, it's creating new content and other things. And then you have DALL-E, which is the one of the more common image generation software. There's a lot of things that are going on to create content. My undergrad was in electrical engineering, and so while I have never really practiced engineering, it was a great construct for learning and how to understand and decouple and decompose a problem into its elemental things so you can kind of understand what's going on or why is something real or not. And that was really a lot of what got me interested when I saw generative AI and I started to learn how it actually worked. I'm like, okay, this is a game changer. This is something that's really going to drive some change. And so as I studied a little bit more on it, one of the things that I've used as an example, just to give the scale, is the Gutenberg printing press in the 15th century was such a big deal. It really changed a lot. It wasn't just about creating the publishing industry or allowing new thoughts. It had socioeconomic and geopolitical impacts. It really kind of shaped the way Western Europe is formed today, as much as anything. It did drive business and productivity, but those were just the basics. So when I look at generative AI, I'm viewing it through that same sort of lens where it's going to generate content in a similar way. It's going to create new ideas. It's going to disrupt a lot in business, but it's also going to have some geopolitical consequences and some socioeconomic changes that will be influencing it. And I think we need to look at the technology from that standpoint because it's out there. It's not going away, even if Congress decided they wanted to regulate and say, we're going to slow down. That doesn't mean that other nation states are going to slow down either. And it doesn't mean that organizations or individuals aren't going to use this technology in ways that are not, say, positive for society, even if we try to say, no, you're not going to do that.
How can AI be used to understand markets for specific products and services or their quality or popularity?
Sure. So, I think by now, most people are aware of the ability of generative AI and tools like ChatGPT to hallucinate. In other words, they're really good at being confident in what they say, but these tools can make things up. And that's really because the way the technology works, a lot of people think it's like a database, but it really isn't. It's just probabilistically taking what you've asked it and matching it up with all the information that's in its training data and training set and probabilistically predicting the first word, the second word, the fourth word, and so on until it gives a very scary good answer that's often correct. But sometimes it can make a mistake because it's just probabilities. So it sounds, like it's giving you a very confident answer, but it may be making things up. So when I think of it from a marketer's perspective, Gen AI should be viewed as a tool. It's just another tool in the toolkit. It may be good at helping with creativity. It may be helping, with drafting of copy for a marketing brochure or things like that. But we need to recognize it's just another tool in the toolbox. I also think it's very important to recognize because of the risks like that. And there's also some other risks like, it's technically possible to expose the copyrighted information that is, in the training set. So there just has to be some review processes around it to help make sure that a marketer is using it appropriately. And then I would say from a consumer perspective, I'd just be very careful. I'd consider it buyer beware. Asking something like you would a consumer reports type product, hey, should I buy this product or what do you think of it? It's not going to be necessarily accurate. It might be. It might give you some good insights, but do your research, follow up, and look for trustworthy sources to make sure that you're giving, that you're getting sound advice. So it's something that could be used to help you understand as a consumer, but it's not necessarily going to be a be-all if you're initiating and using something like ChatGPT.
So as AI becomes more a part of advertising, and as companies and their counsel try to navigate this new complicated landscape, what are some aspects of the technology that advertisers should be mindful when creating ad campaigns to reach consumers?
So let me just kind of share a little bit of what we're seeing in the market in general with law firms and corporations. So as I talk with customers, we see that law firms are often, approaching the topic in different ways as are corporations. So some want to be kind of leading edge, others want to be kind of more conservative. And so we have some law firms that have lists that they know that for these X number of customers do not use AI on anything under any circumstance. And there are others that are the corporation is saying, well, if you can give me like a better price on my legal research or my legal services or do other things for me better, I'm very interested in AI. So we think it's going to kind of flow through the value chain from corporations in particular through law firms and then on into the suppliers that supply some of these technologies. So that's going to be a very interesting thing that will play out. I think the same sort of thing will probably play out in advertising where you're going to see some organizations want to lean in a little bit more because it's cool and might be breakthrough in terms of being able to do something from an advertising perspective. Others may want to really stay and steer clear of it because it's not compliant with the brand that is being presented by the company or the marketer, or the ad agency may not want to support that in a certain way. So I think those are important things. Copyright infringement is an important thing to be top of mind of, just as a general thing in addition to the accuracy with hallucination. I'll give the example of DALL-E, which is a technology that can create images. If you asked it a few months ago the proper way to come up with and develop a cartoon character that looks like a sponge, it would present something that resembled SpongeBob. Because that was the training data that was underneath it. So there is a need to consider not only from a content creation copyright, but also from a trademark perspective, anything that Gen AI is used to be able to create something, that it may have some potential legal implications in the traditional world. So I think that's a very important component. I'd also add, though, that the laws are changing very quickly. So making sure that there's an understanding of what's happening at the federal level and at the state level is important. And depending on what type of advertising is being done and what the organization is representing. So, for example, political ads are, a hot topic right now. There are apparently 40 states that have introduced some degree of legislation around political ads and AI, particularly around deep fakes and, the idea of making a robocall, which is a real case, I think, in New Hampshire, where there's a situation where, calls were sent out, representing to be a person that wasn't, and it sounded just like that person. Those are the sorts of things that are kind of bleeding edge. But knowing that there are other things where organizations are looking to be very effective, you just want to be able to comply and know that you shouldn't be taking somebody's voice, even if it's in jest or a parody or whatever. Just be careful and make sure that you know what the law is.
So one of the concepts we encounter often at NAD when assessing claims in advertising is the reliability of the data on which that claim is based. So generally speaking, when it comes to AI, what are some ideas you might have about checking for accuracy and how that works in practice?
Sure. So one of the things that is a challenge for the off-the-shelf large language model Gen AI solutions like ChatGPT or Claude or others is that it just generates the probabilistic answer. There's not source data outside of what's in the training set, so it doesn't provide references in the same way. You could even ask for, give me a reference, and it will make it up. It's very likely to make it up. So one of the techniques that's used, and I think you'll see this as companies start to offer AI capabilities within their products, is something called retrieval augmented generation. There's some other ones that are agent based and others. I won't get into the technical details, but the bottom line is you're first doing a search of controlled information that you trust, and then taking that information and applying AI to it to summarize, manipulate, or do other things with it. And in that context, you can have those sorts of solutions provide a link to verify the actual underlying data that it's referencing and asserting. So our AI solution that we'll release later in the year in all likelihood has that sort of capability. So it's going to search Wolters Kluwer trusted information, and it's going to provide an answer based upon that trusted information and give references that make it easy for someone to verify it and make sure that it's accurate. I think that's going to be, one of the ways that's going to, to play out. The other thing is, I think if you do use a generative AI solution that is, just like the consumer grade version of ChatGPT, make sure that you're finding your answer. Use that for ideas, but then make sure that you can find sources and validate what you're seeing in other trusted, reliable sources.
How do you use AI, Ken?
Well, frankly, in my personal life, I'm not an early adopter of technology in general. There are certain things that I look at and say, oh, a new app, this is really easy. It's great. So like when airline apps came out and you didn't have to have a printed ticket and your seat assignment automatically changed when the aircraft equipment changed, or you were able to see that your flight was delayed before they posted on the board. That was pretty cool. So there are things like that I definitely like to, to adopt early or when it's very practical. But I'm not somebody that just tries technology just for technology standpoint. I do use Gen AI to play with it, and I play with it as brainstorming. I use it to come up with ideas or, to identify how something would work with a specific question. I do have a lot of tools that I use, and, I include the ones that I mentioned earlier in the podcast as examples. So, Siri or others that are, give me some opportunity to have some utility. But I also am very mindful of technology from a trust standpoint, and knowing that even before AI was on the radar, a lot of the privacy policies of some of these companies, included the ability to use your information for training purposes, which actually had a different meaning before you understood that it could be used for potentially for training AI. So think of your voice when you're using one of these technologies. Is that something that is actually being used? I don't know for certain, and I think there'll probably be laws that will clarify it. But those are the sorts of things that give me a little bit of pause in terms of being too early in how I use AI. I would also say one thing. I am writing a book on the side, and I've specifically chosen to avoid using Gen AI in creating content for that book. I don't want to be in a position where I would have to disclose that I actually used AI as part of that. I'd rather let things kind of play out and understand how that works before I would ever, consider taking that kind of step and using it to even shape the words that I use.
I also was wondering if you could tell us anything about how courts have encountered AI. What can you, any tips you can give us from what the courts have said at this stage?
Sure. So I think everybody has seen, some headline of, lawyer used ChatGPT and this happened or whatever. And I think the reality is that the places where we've seen situations where somebody's filed a court proceeding or argued something and a case didn't exist because they used ChatGPT, it's because they weren't providing the due diligence and actually reading the case because it didn't exist. So there have been various reactions to that from courts, and I think sounder minds will prevail over time. But there have been some don't use AI in anything that goes on. Well, if you take that to its logical conclusion, spell check is technically an AI tool. So are you telling the people that are pleading before your court that you don't want them to spell check their briefs and their filings before they submit them if they're using electronic tools to do it and do that manually? I don't think so. So I do think that there are going to be, a little bit more clarification on that. It'll be interesting when it actually gets good enough that the obligation is not only on attorneys to use AI, but courts themselves.
And before we go, Ken, can you tell people where they can follow you best to get a glimpse at your work?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's an easy place, but I also have most of my articles are published on Above the Law. And if you just Google Above the Law and Ken Crutchfield, you'll probably find the page that has all of my articles there. I do other things like this podcast, so I will be found in other ways if you're searching for me, but that's the primary means of connecting with me.
Well, Ken, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us today, Ken. So, Eric, wasn't that a great conversation?
I really learned a lot, Annie, and especially as someone who hadn't learned that much about AI and all its implications and uses and the types of AI. I really learned a lot in that short conversation.
Yeah, so let's talk about some takeaways. One is that AI is really all around us. It's not something that's new. I mean, Ken mentioned that this is used in our iPhone, Siri, in cars, with lane assist, and so it's something that is, provides, great new content, but it's also disruptive in many ways, from a socioeconomic standpoint, from a geopolitical standpoint, and it's not going away anytime soon.
And I think it's important for everyone to understand that it's not perfect yet. The laws may change, and they may change depending where you are. Internationally, they may have different requirements. We'll see how courts handle AI, and it's very important for consumers and brands that information gained through AI needs to be validated through other sources. We're not there yet, and it should be looked at as one tool in the toolkit. You also need to be aware about the risks of running afoul of laws in trademark or copyright or anywhere else where the law may impact the use of AI. I really think this is just the start of a conversation we're going to have about AI and how it affects advertising and our focus on advertising law. Well, everyone, thank you again for tuning into this episode of Ad Watchers. We hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Join us next month for another episode of the Ad Watchers. As always, you can head over to our website, bbbprograms.org, to learn about what we do at the National Advertising Division or any of our other self-regulatory programs. That's all for this episode. See you next time. Thanks again for tuning into Ad Watchers. Be sure to check out our previous episodes at accountabilitystudio.org, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to get notified about our next episode. Until then, leave us a review and let us know what you would like to hear from us this season.